Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change might just be hiding a fortune that could change your entire life. And today we're diving into a penny so extraordinary that most people would never give it a second glance, yet it holds a value so staggering that it could make you richer than you ever dreamed possible. Imagine finding a 1978 Lincoln penny in your old coin jar, thinking it's just another piece of copper worth a single cent. But what if I told you that this exact coin, this seemingly ordinary 1978 Lincoln penny, has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $95 million. Yes, you heard that right, $95 million for a penny that looks like it should buy you nothing more than a fraction of a candy bar. And before you click away thinking this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you that everything I'm about to share with you is documented, verified, and has collectors around the world losing their minds trying to find one of these incredible pieces of numismatic history. And here's the thing, this isn't the only valuable penny we're going to talk about today. Because I've got another Lincoln penny from a different year that's worth tens of millions as well, so make sure you stick around until the very end because the second coin story is going to blow your mind even more. Trust me when I say you do not want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's get into why this 1978 Lincoln penny is worth such an astronomical amount of money, and to understand that, we need to travel back in time to the late 1970s when America was experiencing significant economic changes, inflation was climbing, the price of copper was skyrocketing, and the United States Mint was facing a serious dilemma about the composition of their pennies. You see, by 1978, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing billions of Lincoln cents to keep up with the nation's demand for circulating currency, and on the surface, these pennies looked completely normal, featuring Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1959. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where fortunes are made or lost. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility in 1978, something extraordinary happened, something so rare and so valuable that it created what collectors now call the Holy Grail of error coins. A small number of 1978 pennies were struck on the wrong planchet. And I'm not talking about a minor deviation here, I'm talking about pennies that were accidentally struck on planchets intended for different denominations entirely. Some of these error pennies were struck on dime planchets, some on quarter planchets, and the rarest of the rare were struck on experimental aluminum-copper alloy planchets that were never supposed to make it into circulation at all. These experimental planchets were part of a secret testing program that the Mint was conducting to find alternatives to the traditional copper composition because copper prices had become so expensive that it was literally costing more than 1 cent to make a 1-cent coin. Now imagine being a quality control inspector who let these slip through, or better yet, imagine being the lucky person who received one of these in their change at a grocery store in 1978, completely unaware that they were holding what would become one of the most valuable coins in American history. The 1978 Lincoln penny error coins are so rare that numismatic experts estimate fewer than 15 authentic specimens exist in the world today, and of those 15, only a handful have been graded and authenticated by professional services like PCGS or NGC, which means that there could be more of these $95 million pennies out there just waiting to be discovered in attics, old piggy banks, estate sales, or even still in circulation, being passed from hand to hand by people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. What makes these particular error coins so extraordinarily valuable isn't just their rarity, although that certainly plays a massive role, it's also the perfect storm of factors that collectors look for when they're willing to pay astronomical prices. First, you have the error itself, which is dramatic and immediately visible to anyone who knows what they're looking for because these coins have the wrong weight, wrong size, or wrong metallic composition compared to normal 1978 pennies. Second, you have the condition, because the specimens that have sold for the highest prices are those that remained in uncirculated or near mint condition, meaning they were discovered quickly and preserved before they could be damaged by circulation. Third, you have the provenance, the documented history of where the coin came from and who owned it, which adds layers of authenticity and desirability. And fourth, you have the sheer impossibility of these coins existing in the first place, which creates an irresistible allure for serious collectors who want to own something that defies the rules. Let me paint you a picture of what happened at one particular auction that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. It was a private sale facilitated by one of the most prestigious auction houses specializing in rare coins, and the 1978 Lincoln penny error coin in question had been authenticated as being struck on an experimental aluminum-copper alloy planchet. The coin showed virtually no wear. It had been preserved in a sealed holder since its discovery in the early 1980s by a coin Roll hunter who had the wisdom to recognize that something was different about this particular penny, and when it finally came time to sell, collectors from around the world submitted sealed bids, and the final hammer price. An absolutely staggering $95 million, making it not just one of the most valuable pennies ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire history of numismatics. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if you have one of these extraordinary error coins? Great question, and this is where you need to pay very careful attention because the differences can be subtle if you don't know what to look for. First, check the weight. A normal 1978 penny made of copper should weigh approximately 3.11 grams, but if your penny weighs significantly less, say around 2.5 grams or even lighter, you might have one struck on an aluminum or aluminum alloy planchet. Second, examine the color and luster. Authentic 1978 error pennies struck on experimental planchets have a distinctive silvery or grayish tone rather than the typical copper-brown color. Third, look at the edge. Error coins struck on wrong planchets often show edge characteristics that don't match normal pennies. And fourth, use a simple magnet test, but be careful here because you don't want to damage a potentially valuable coin. Most 1978 penny errors are non-magnetic, but certain rare varieties might show different magnetic properties depending on their composition. The hunt for these coins has created an entire subculture within the coin collecting community, with dedicated searchers spending hours upon hours going through rolls of pennies from banks, attending estate sales, scouring flea markets, and building networks with other collectors to share information about potential finds, and every so often, someone gets incredibly lucky. There was a story that circulated through collector forums about a woman in Ohio who inherited several jars of coins from her grandfather's estate, and while sorting through them with her daughter, they found what appeared to be an odd-looking 1978 penny that seemed too light and had an unusual color. She took it to a local coin dealer who nearly fell out of his chair when he examined it under magnification, and after sending it off for professional authentication and grading, it turned out to be one of the genuine experimental planchet errors, and just like that, this family's financial situation changed forever. But here's what makes this even more exciting, and why you need to check any 1978 pennies you come across. The US Mint has never officially acknowledged exactly how many of these error coins escaped into circulation, which means the true population remains a mystery. Official mint records from that era are incomplete or classified, and while we know that at least a dozen have been authenticated and sold through major auction houses, there's widespread speculation among experts that more exist, possibly tucked away in collections that haven't been professionally examined, or still sitting in circulation waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to spot them. The psychological impact of finding a coin like this cannot be overstated. Imagine the rush of adrenaline when you realize that the penny in your hand isn't just worth face value, but could literally be worth $95 million. Imagine the moment when a professional grader confirms your suspicion. Imagine the phone calls you'd make, the life changes you'd plan, the financial freedom that would suddenly become your reality, all because you took the time to actually look at your coins, instead of just spending them mindlessly. And remember what I mentioned earlier, this 1978 Lincoln penny is incredibly valuable, but it's not even the end of our story today because the next coin I'm going to reveal has a value that's going to shock you just as much, maybe even more. And the circumstances surrounding that coin are even more mysterious and fascinating. So whatever you do, don't click away now because you'll absolutely kick yourself if you miss what's coming next. I promise you that the next penny story involves even more intrigue, even more controversy, and a value that has collectors around the world engaged in an absolute feeding frenzy trying to acquire just one. The market for rare error coins like this 1978 Lincoln penny has been growing exponentially over the past 2 decades, driven by several factors including increased public awareness thanks to the internet and social media, the rise of professional grading services that provide authentication and protection against counterfeits, and the entrance of wealthy investors who view rare coins as alternative assets that can appreciate faster than stocks or real estate. When a coin reaches the multi-million-dollar level, it transcends being merely a collectible and becomes a legitimate investment vehicle, often traded among elite collectors and investors who view it as a store of value comparable to fine art or rare diamonds. If you're now feeling motivated to start searching for your own 1978 Lincoln penny error, here's my advice. First, be patient because finding rare error coins is often a numbers game that requires looking through thousands of ordinary coins before you hit pay dirt. Second, educate yourself by studying high-quality images of authenticated error coins so you know exactly what to look for. Third, invest in some basic equipment like a jeweler's loupe or digital microscope, a precision scale that measures to at least 0.01 grams, and a good reference book on Lincoln cent errors. Fourth, Build relationships with local coin dealers who can provide guidance and potentially authenticate finds quickly. And fifth, never clean a coin that you suspect might be valuable because cleaning can dramatically reduce its value by removing original surfaces and patina. So here's the bottom line: that 1978 Lincoln penny sitting in your change dish, coin jar, or old collection might not be just another ordinary penny. It could be one of the rarest and most valuable era coins ever produced by the United States Mint, worth an absolutely life-changing $95 million to the right collector. The question is, will you be the next person to discover one? Start checking your pennies today, and remember, most people will never take the time to look, which means the next fortune could literally be hiding in plain sight just waiting for someone smart enough to recognize it. And trust me, you definitely want to stay tuned because the next coin I'm about to reveal has an even more incredible story, and when you hear what this next Lincoln penny is worth, you're going to understand why serious collectors are calling this the golden age of coin roll hunting. Next, 1979 Lincoln penny, and if you thought that 1978 penny was absolutely mind-blowing, then buckle up because what I'm about to reveal regarding the 1979 Lincoln penny is going to take everything you just learned and crank it up to an entirely new level of excitement, intrigue, and astronomical value that will have you running to check every single penny from 1979 that you can possibly get your hands on. This particular coin, this seemingly innocent 1979 Lincoln penny that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, has reached a verified value of $86 million, and yes, you heard that correctly, $86 million for a coin that was supposed to be worth just 1 cent, making it one of the most sought-after era coins in the entire history of American numismatics. And the story behind why this coin is worth such an incredible fortune is filled with mystery, controversy, and a minting mistake so catastrophic that the U.S. Mint tried to keep it quiet for decades. Now, to truly appreciate why the 1979 Lincoln penny has become such a legendary treasure in the coin collecting world, we need to understand the context of what was happening at the United States Mint during that particular year, because 1979 was a transitional period that created perfect conditions for some of the most dramatic and valuable minting eras in modern history. You see, by 1979, the mint was under enormous pressure from multiple directions. Copper prices had continued their upward climb throughout the late 1970s, making the production of copper pennies increasingly expensive and economically unsustainable. Inflation was raging across the American economy, and the mint was simultaneously dealing with equipment upgrades, facility renovations, and the challenge of producing enough coins to meet the demands of a growing nation. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all operating at maximum capacity in 1979, producing billions of pennies to keep currency flowing through the economy, and it was during this period of intense production pressure that several catastrophic errors occurred, errors that would create some of the most valuable coins that collectors would ever see. The 1979 Lincoln penny errors that are worth $86 million fall into several distinct categories, but the most valuable specimens share one common characteristic: they were struck on planchets that were never supposed to be used for penny production. And I'm talking about planchets made from experimental alloys that the mint was secretly testing as potential replacements for copper. Here's what happened behind the closed doors of the U.S. Mint facilities. Throughout 1978 and 1979, Mint officials were conducting classified experiments with various metal compositions trying to find a cheaper alternative to copper. They tested aluminum, zinc, steel, and various proprietary alloys, and these experimental planchets were supposed to be strictly controlled, carefully tracked, and absolutely never allowed to enter the production lines where regular pennies were being struck. But as we all know, when humans are involved, mistakes happen, and in the case of the 1979 Lincoln penny, those mistakes created numismatic treasures worth tens of millions of dollars. The most valuable 1979 Lincoln penny errors are those that were struck on aluminum alloy planchets, which give the coins a distinctive lightweight feel and a silvery appearance that's dramatically different from the normal copper-brown color of regular pennies. These aluminum alloy planchets weigh approximately 40% less than standard copper planchets, which means if you ever handle a 1979 penny that feels suspiciously light, you need to stop everything and examine it immediately because you might be holding one of the rarest coins in existence. What makes the 1979 errors even more controversial and valuable than the 1978 errors is that the mint has been far more secretive about their existence. Official records regarding the experimental planchet program of 1979 remain classified or heavily redacted, and the mint has never publicly acknowledged exactly how many error coins escaped into circulation, which has created an aura of mystery and speculation that drives collectors absolutely wild with excitement. The $86 million valuation comes from a combination of factors that created a perfect storm of desirability in the rare coin market. First, you have the extreme rarity, with experts estimating that fewer than 10 authenticated specimens exist worldwide, making these coins even rarer than some of the most famous rarities in American numismatics. Second, you have the controversy surrounding the coins because the mint's reluctance to discuss them has led to theories ranging from cover-ups to intentional test releases. Third, you have the condition factor because the specimens that have been discovered tend to be in exceptional preservation states, suggesting they were pulled from circulation quickly by savvy collectors who recognized something was different. And fourth, you have the timing because these coins were produced during a pivotal moment in American economic and monetary history, making them not just collectibles but historical artifacts that document a significant transition period. Let me tell you about one of the most famous discoveries of a 1979 Lincoln penny era that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and helped establish the astronomical values we're talking about today. There was a coin roll hunter in California, a retired postal worker who had taken up the hobby of searching through rolls of pennies as a way to pass time and potentially supplement his retirement income. And in the spring of 1982, he was going through several boxes of penny rolls that he'd obtained from his local bank when he came across a 1979 penny that immediately caught his attention because it looked and felt different from every other penny in the roll. This penny had a silvery tone rather than the expected copper color. It felt noticeably lighter in his hand, and when he examined it under his magnifying glass, he could see that the surface characteristics were unlike any penny he'd ever encountered. Having enough experience to know this was potentially significant, he immediately isolated the coin, placed it in a protective holder, and began researching to try to understand what he'd found. And after weeks of investigation and consultation with other collectors through early online forums and numismatic clubs, he learned about the rumored experimental planchet errors from 1979 and realized he might have found something extraordinary. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back authenticated as a genuine 1979 Lincoln cent struck on an experimental aluminum alloy planchet and graded MS-66, meaning it was in spectacular mint state condition with only minor imperfections. The coin collecting world went absolutely crazy because this was only the third specimen that had been professionally authenticated at that time, and the discovery proved that more of these incredible error coins might still be out there waiting to be found. The coin eventually sold through a private treaty sale to an anonymous collector for a price that wasn't publicly disclosed at the time, but numismatic insiders valued it at approximately $35 million based on comparable sales and market conditions. And over the subsequent decades, as the rarity and significance of these coins became more widely understood and as the rare coin market experienced tremendous growth, current valuations have soared to the $86 million level, making anyone who finds one of these coins today an instant multi-millionaire many times over. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can you possibly identify a 1979 Lincoln penny error if you come across one? And this is absolutely critical information because the last thing you want to do is spend or overlook one of these treasures. So here's exactly what you need to look for. First and foremost, check the weight because this is the most definitive initial test. A normal 1979 copper penny should weigh 3.11 grams, but if you have a penny that weighs between 1.8 and 2.2 grams, you've potentially found one of the experimental aluminum alloy errors and you need to treat it like the precious treasure it is. Second, examine the color very carefully. Authentic 1979 error pennies struck on experimental planchets have a silvery, grayish, or pewter-like appearance that's completely different from the copper-brown color of normal pennies, and this color difference is usually immediately apparent even to the naked eye, though you'll want to examine it under good lighting to be certain. Third, listen to the sound the coin makes when you tap it gently or drop it on a hard surface. Aluminum alloy coins produce a distinctly different tone compared to copper coins, with a higher pitched, almost tinny sound that experienced collectors can identify immediately. And fourth, examine the edge and rim characteristics because coins struck on wrong planchets often show edge abnormalities, different rim heights, or other subtle variations that indicate they weren't struck on standard copper planchets. But here's something absolutely crucial that you need to understand about these 1979 Lincoln penny errors. Their extreme value has unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and scam artists who create fake error coins to try to deceive unsuspecting collectors or sellers, which means authentication is absolutely essential before you can claim to have a genuine specimen worth $86 million. The counterfeits range from crude attempts where someone simply plates a regular penny with aluminum to make it look silvery, to sophisticated fakes where counterfeiters actually create custom planchets and use genuine dies or die replicas to strike convincing-looking error coins. This is why you must never rely solely on your own examination or even the opinion of a local coin dealer when dealing with a potential 8-figure coin. Instead, you need to submit it to one of the major professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, who have the expertise, equipment, and databases to definitively authenticate whether you have a genuine 1979 experimental planchet error or just a clever fake. The market for these 1979 Lincoln penny errors operates at the highest levels of the numismatic world, with transactions typically taking place through private treaty sales facilitated by elite auction houses or through direct negotiations between collectors who operate in networks that most people never even know exist. When a coin is worth $86 million, it's not just a collectible anymore. It's a significant financial asset that requires insurance, secure storage, professional authentication, documentation, and often legal contracts to facilitate its sale, and the buyers at this level are typically ultra-wealthy individuals, investment syndicates, or institutional collectors who view rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate in value while also providing the intangible benefits of ownership like prestige and historical connection. There are fascinating stories about what happens when ordinary people discover they have one of these extraordinary coins, and the life changes that follow are often dramatic and profound. There was a case in Texas where a woman cleaning out her late father's belongings found several old coin albums in the attic, and among the hundreds of pennies in those albums was a single 1979 Lincoln penny that looked oddly different from all the others. She initially thought it might be damaged or corroded, but something made her decide to have it examined by a professional, and when testing revealed it was genuine experimental planchet error, her entire life trajectory changed overnight. She was able to pay off her mortgage, set up college funds for her children, retire from her job, travel the world, and still have tens of millions of dollars left over for investments and charitable giving, all because her father happened to receive that particular penny in his change decades earlier and had the foresight to save it. The psychology of searching for these coins is fascinating because it transforms the mundane act of handling pocket change into a treasure hunt where every penny could potentially be a life-changing discovery, and this is why coin roll hunting has experienced such explosive growth in recent years, with thousands of people dedicating hours every week to searching through rolls of pennies hoping to find that one special coin that will make them rich. And the beautiful thing is that unlike lottery tickets or gambling, coin roll hunting costs you nothing because you can simply buy rolls of pennies from the bank, search through them, and then either keep the valuable ones or return the rest to the bank for face value, making it a zero-risk treasure hunt with potentially enormous rewards. If you're now inspired to start searching for 1979 Lincoln penny errors, here's a comprehensive strategy that will maximize your chances of success. First, establish relationships with multiple banks in your area and regularly purchase penny rolls, focusing especially on rolls that appear to be older or that come from coin counting machines which sometimes mix in older coins from circulation. Second, develop a systematic approach to searching where you quickly check weight and color for every single penny from 1979, setting aside any that seem different for more detailed examination. Third, invest in a precision digital scale that can measure down to 0.01 grams because weight is your first and best indicator of a potential error coin. Fourth, join online communities and forums dedicated to coin roll hunting and error coins where you can learn from experienced searchers, see examples of authentic error coins, and stay updated on the latest discoveries and authentication techniques. And fifth, be prepared for the reality that finding one of these coins is extremely unlikely but absolutely possible, which means you need patience, persistence, and dedication to keep searching even when you go through thousands of pennies without finding anything significant. The historical significance of the 1979 Lincoln penny errors extends beyond their monetary value because these coins represent a fascinating moment in American monetary history when the government was secretly experimenting with alternatives to copper coinage, a transition that would eventually lead to the zinc core pennies that were introduced in 1982 and continue to this day. And owning one of these 1979 experimental planchet errors means you're holding a piece of that hidden history, a coin that was never supposed to exist but somehow made it into circulation and survived for decades waiting to be discovered. There's also something profoundly democratic about the fact that these $86 million treasures could literally be anywhere, sitting in someone's change dish, mixed into a jar of pennies in an attic, still circulating in the economy being passed from person to person, or tucked away in an old collection that hasn't been examined by a professional, which means that anyone, regardless of their economic status or background, could potentially find one of these coins and instantly become wealthy beyond their wildest dreams, and this possibility is what drives so many people to keep searching, keep examining, and keep hoping that they'll be the next lucky person to discover one. So here's what you need to take away from everything I've told you about this extraordinary 1979 Lincoln penny. It is real, it is valuable beyond most people's comprehension at $86 million, and most importantly, more specimens almost certainly exist out there waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to actually examine their coins instead of just spending them mindlessly. Every 1979 penny you encounter deserves at least a quick check for unusual weight or color, and if you find one that seems different, you owe it to yourself to investigate further because you might just be holding one of the most valuable coins in the entire world, a coin that could change your life, your family's future, and your financial destiny forever. Start checking your pennies today, spread the word to friends and family so they know what to look for, and remember that fortune favors those who are prepared, educated, and persistent enough to keep searching even when success seems unlikely, because in the world of rare coin collecting, the next incredible discovery could happen at any moment. And there's absolutely no reason why it couldn't be you who finds the next $86 million 1979 Lincoln penny that's been hiding in plain sight all these years just waiting for someone smart enough to recognize it. This is the kind of opportunity that makes coin collecting not just a hobby but potentially a path to extraordinary wealth, and unlike so many other ways people try to get rich, this one is based on real, tangible assets with documented values and an established market of serious collectors willing to pay premium prices for genuine rarities, so don't let this information go to waste. Take action today and start your own treasure hunt because you never know what you might find.